Mr. President, ministers, honoured guests, colleagues, and most particularly our graduands. It is my privilege to welcome you to this first graduation ceremony for the St. George's medical degree delivered by the University of Nicosia in Cyprus. It is an exceptional occasion, and I would suggest that the date, the 15th of May 2015, 15/5/15, should go down in history. Very little is known about the real St. George, although he's believed to have been born a noble in the Middle East. George refused to take part in systematic persecution of Christians by the Romans and was himself tortured and executed in Palestine in 303 AD. The legend of George slaying a dragon originates from medieval times and is on the back of my gown. What was striking when I first visited Cyprus was the number of effigies of St. George on the island, symbolic of a link between Cyprus and England's patron saint. Today's ceremony is another important symbol of the link as we witness the graduation of these first doctors trained in a medical school in Cyprus, but with a UK degree. Given the auspiciousness of the occasion, may I be permitted just to indulge for a moment in explaining the significance of a degree from St. George's Hospital Medical School. I was in the audience when Sir Bruce Keogh, who's the current medical director of NHS England, was talking about how Britain has contributed to science and discovery in medicine. And many of the areas that he identified were in fact discovered, invented, or put into clinical trials at St. George's. So, graduates, let me just explain. It was Edward Jenner, an alumnus of St. George's in 1796, who took the inoculum from a cowpox on the back of Sarah Nelm's hand, and, without informed consent or ethical permission, inoculated it into James Phipps's arm. He was aged 8, and subsequently shown that James was protected against smallpox, the start of vaccination. Sadly, another famous alumnus of St. George's, Henry Gray, FRS of Gray's Anatomy, died at the age of 34 from smallpox, caught from his nephew, despite being vaccinated. Nevertheless, it was a George's alumnus who actually drew the amazingly detailed anatomical drawings in Gray's Anatomy, which live on till today, Henry Van Dyke Carter. It was Patrick Manson in 1877 who was the person who identified the likely carriage of malaria by mosquitoes, a lecturer at St. George's. Then moving into the 20th century, Patrick Steptoe, who graduated from St. George's in 1939, was the surgeon who developed the technique of the telescopic or laparoscopic removal of ova from women's ovary, and working with Robert Edwards, actually established in vitro fertilization, IVF. Just think of the millions of babies that have been born since then. Interestingly, the moral outrage when Louise Brown was born in 1978 meant that they did not report their findings until 1980. In the 1960s and the 1970s, doctors Aubrey Leatham, Jeffrey Davis, and Mike Davis led the world in defining valvular heart disease through auscultation, echocardiography, and pathology, and also the understanding of cardiac arrhythmias, abnormal heartbeats. St. George's had the first European centre for angiography and the first centre for cardiac pacemaking in the 1970s. And it was a forensic pathologist, Donald Tier at St. George's, who described the condition hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is an inherited condition and may account for some of the deaths of elite athletes that unfortunately we're beginning to see apparently on a more frequent occasion, and that research still lives on at St. George's. In the late 1960s, a physicist called Godfrey Hounsfield, who worked for EMI, took his idea of serial X-rays analysed by a computer program to Queen Square Nervous Diseases Hospital and was told literally to get lost. He came to St George's and worked with a very energetic and innovative neuroradiologist, Dr. Jamie Ambrose, and the first CT scan in the world was performed at St George's in September 1971. There are many other discoverers. There are discoverers outside science. I'm sure very few of you would know that Walter Cheadle, who qualified from St George's in 1861, joined an unsuccessful expedition to find Canada's Northwest Passage. But there can't be many medical schools that have a town and a mountain named after one of their alumnus. And finally, perhaps one of our even more famous alumnus was Edward Wilson, who journeyed to the South Pole with Robert Falcon Scott on that ill-fated expedition and died in 1912. I'm pleased to confirm that spirit of discovery lives on at St George's. It is epitomised by our current researchers in infection and immunity. Professor Julian Marr is developing vaccines, so we hark back to Jenner. He's developing vaccines from plants. It's known as farming, P-H-A-R-M-I-N-G. And Mike Sharland is addressing the very pressing problem of antimicrobial resistance. And in cardiology, Sanjay Sharma has become the world expert in screening elite athletes for cardiac abnormalities to prevent sudden death. And there are many, many more investigations and successful research findings. But in terms of education, I regard today's graduation as further evidence of the innovative approach St George's has taken to medical education and training, a day when I believe St George's has played a very considerable role in establishing a thriving medical school in Cyprus, of which we are all extremely proud. Having said such, I must acknowledge the absolutely fantastic work undertaken by Andreas Karamboulos and his colleagues, and colleagues from Israel, North America, and London. They have brought this medical school into reality. Graduates, we salute you on your success. You will appreciate that you are joining a company of distinguished alumni. We are looking to you to continue the tradition of outstanding patient care and thereby contributing to the future history of two remarkable medical schools. I wish you every success for the future.